What's the deal, YouTube? It's your boy, Next Gen 720, and I'm back with another video. I got a special guest with me today. You guys remember for the interview I did, the one-on-one with me and did Shut Eyes. I have her back with another video with me today. We're going to sit, well, I was just behind the scenes. I talked to him every day. Became a very good friend of mine. And I was just behind the scenes. We were talking about this this Sony article. And I said, hey, you hop in the video with me. So anyway, shout yourself out, bro.
What's up, guys? Dead Shot Eyes. I'm glad to be here with my boys out here, bro.
Bang, bang. So anyway, check it out. So, I'm gonna let you're the guest today, so it's what I normally want to do. Yeah, read a little bit of the article. Tell me and talk to me about it. How you feel?
Well, as I'm looking at this picture of Kaz with a stupid-ass face and 4 fingers up, it says, today Sony issued a warning that its 2014 financial year loss would be almost 20% worse than it's predicted in February.
God damn.
God damn. Sony's new preliminary fiscal year net loss was an eye-watering 130 billion yen, approximately 753 million pounds.
And to put that in perspective, pounds are worth more than dollars. So if it's 753 million pounds, it's probably about about $900 American dollars, or somewhere along on 800 or whatever the fuck. Yeah. Pounds are worth more than dollars, but you know.
This is 18% above the forecast it made just a few months ago. At one point, it had expected to make a profit for the financial year. Not anymore.
Damn. Oh, so hold on again. Okay, so I think a lot of, well, I won't say fans, extremists.
Extremist is a good word.
Yeah, you know, when you say, oh, Sony sold 7 million units, or whatever the fuck the case may be, but this you see why, you know, Microsoft and Sony, Mr. Microsoft and everybody came out and, you know, released their, you know, their numbers. Like, where the fuck are Sony numbers at? Like, you know what I mean?
At least Microsoft's making a profit, at least on everything they sell.
Yeah, Microsoft, yeah, you know, this, you know what, before, you know, I wanted to try to, you know, maybe wrap my head around this right here, you know what I mean? And again, and we were something we just talking about, and I remember back in the, you know, I'm 36 years old, and, you know, I'm a lot older than a lot of guys that watch my videos, and, I remember back in the day where, dating back to the VCRs, when, you know, everybody had VCRs in the house, everything was Sony. Sony was the premier brand, you know? Yep. And they were, you know, but, you know, they were really expensive, but I got me a Sony. Sony, you know, it started from the Walkmans back in the day. Sony Walkman to the Sony Discman, and everything was Sony. And then here you come, and, you know, not just Samsung, which is Sony's biggest competitor. Yep. But, you know, Samsung, Sony's TVs, and... But let's take their computer, because they saying that the big loss is because they sold the PC department and they had to still pay for the shit that they bought, you know what I mean, all the parts and stuff. But a Sony computer will cost you just as much as an iMac.
And do less.
Like running Windows, and what in this even this Sony computer may have less specs than an HP Pavilion or some shit, or you know, look better than the E-Machine, but it's a Windows PC. And their laptops were like $2,000, and you know, like crazy prices.
Well,
like,
let's put in big perspective right here, though. I mean, you got a TV. I mean, the biggest purchase you can make if you love entertainment, right?
Yeah, TV. You spend the most on TV, then surround sound.
We'll go like this, okay? We'll do a Sony TV that's 60 inches, does 3D, and has the 120 hertz and all that good stuff. Now you take the same Samsung TV, same specs, but it will always be about $300 to $400 cheaper than that same Sony spec. It does the same exact thing, same picture quality. You will always find it cheaper. You're paying for the name Sony now. You're not paying for their product. You're paying for that nameplate.
Well, I'm just being real. Now Sony, as far as electronics, you know, Sony name is shit. Yeah. So what they should need to do, because being real, all this shit is put together in China. You know what I mean? It is what it is. They're not paying that much to have shit imported. You know what I mean? The same thing with, you know, everything's important. They send these shits over on boats. And, like, now, let's get off a little bit. I'll talk that my 7-year-old, her mother is a longshoreman. She works at the port. Bitch makes a lot of money, too. But anyway, I didn't realize that whether it be Xboxes or TVs, everything gets shipped on, majority of things get shipped over here on boats. You know what I mean? And it's cheaper to send them that way. So, I can't say that Sony's doing this shit, the hype, you know, because of, you know, important fees and all that shit, because Samsung does the same thing, and this shit is sometimes $500 cheap. Sometimes Samsung TV may have the better specs.
Mm-hmm.
and it still will be cheaper than Sony's.
Well, hey, Zaire, how much you think a Sony house is going to cost when they start selling those? How much you think that's going to cost?
Hey, yo, Sony, yeah, they getting, you know, they also, their stocks took a hit when they announced that shit there. You know what I mean? They getting into Sony timeshares. You take your vacation in a Sony built apartment with Sony. You know, I don't know, man. But like I said today, at this rate right here that Sony's going, now I'm gonna say this again. This is a company that was worth over $135 billion. I'm sorry, 9 years ago. They have not turned a profit as a company in 9 years. And so where they now they have about $15.5 billion in the bank.
Well,
that's crazy.
But they lost a lot of money on that cell processor. They just abandoned it. I mean, all that cell processor did was, first of all, cost them a lot of money. Second of all, made it harder to develop games. And now they just threw that away. And now they're in the hole for it.
Well, Mark Cerny talked about it, you know, reusing that tech, you know what I mean? Which is, she talked about it using it because it would have been a lot cheaper for them to go with that this way around as far as the PlayStation 4. But developers hated it. They hated, you know, like I take like prime example. This is a good thing for Sony. They listen. The developers is what make your console. Like I was saying, but as far as like Nintendo, don't listen to third party. Like that, you know, you look how great Sony exclusives look. But when it came to third party, the games suffered horribly. Right. You know what I mean? And like I said, you know, you need third party. And kudos for Sony for listening. Like I told you guys, you get exclusives every 2 months. You get multiplats every fucking Tuesday. And that's one of the I was talking about in my video as far as Nintendo, that Nintendo, you know, made their image the Wii U for Nintendo in-house, and the third party was second. And it honestly should be the other way around, work together. But anyway, kudos to them for the listen. But yeah, they lost a lot of money on that sell, on Blu-ray. It didn't jumpstart the way they thought it was going to do. You know what I mean? Because think about it, it was looking like Blu-ray was going to replace DVD. You know what I mean? Like how DVD phased out VHS. You know, I'm just being real. You know, at the time, it was making less than 2% of American, you know, households had high definition TVs. You know what I mean? That's when still all the cable company was still using analog signals before it went to digital. You know what I mean? Now you can't, you know, you can't get cable, can't watch TV if you don't have cable. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But yeah, they were banking on that, and it kind of backfired in their face. You know what I mean? Well, even as far as Blu-ray, if they made it more affordable, I'm just being real. My grandmother has a high, you know, they don't sell. She has a high def. She has flat screens in the house. She only sells flat screens. Not saying my grandmother's any more high tech than your grandmother, but we replaced her TVs. I got her, you know, she got a 32-inch in her room. She has a flat screen 19-inch in the kitchen. And then my little cousin, he has, you know, they don't sell older TVs anymore because she can care less about high def. You know what I mean? And she's fine with her DVDs. Like Sandy explained, that not everybody cares about Blu-ray in high definition, you know what I mean? Like my grandmother can really sit until I don't like that. My grandmother watched. She came over my house for the weekend, and she watched. She's a big True Blood fan. I got the True Blood. I'm sorry, on Blu-ray, and I put a Blu-ray. She said, I don't like this shit, Blizz. This shit look too real. Shit, they look. Oh, Bill Compton, ugly as hell up close. Put her, and she was bugging about that shit. So not everybody cares about that stuff right there. You know what I mean? And like I said, you like Sony. Sometimes, you know, I think they can be over ambitious a little bit. Like even with this shit they got talking about, they coming out with something for your tongue, for the saliva. They having a peripheral. They were trying to patent for the PlayStation 4 something for a wig and saliva, something to do with gaming. Like god damn.
Well, the virtual reality helmet too. I mean, all they're trying to do is jump on Oculus Rift. I mean, who's really going to buy that VR helmet? I mean,
no, I don't.
And you know another thing too is I'm gonna tell you. Two things. Number one, I don't think they're going to make another console after the PlayStation 4. I think that's why they bought Gaikai to test out the streaming now, so they can just have a controller plug into the TV, and that would be the next format they're going to go to.
Well, hey, not for nothing. I just talked about it on a podcast last week. Sony said they're looking to get out to exit the hardware business. You know what I mean? So this may be the last PlayStation 4, or if not the 5. Because think about it, making consoles costs a lot of money. Deadshot, why do you think Valve is not doing their own Steam machine? It costs a lot of money to do hardware. You know what I mean? It does. You know what I mean? But you have a plug in the controller into one of their TVs and have access to the full PlayStation library.
Right. And this is another thing, too, is I think if the PlayStation brand does continue at the rate they're selling everything, it may be the Samsung PlayStation or the LG PlayStation sooner or later.
So you think, like I said, there's no, like, I've heard, not saying I'm got inside source, but I heard somebody, I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, shout out to my man Thor, white boy Thor. You know what I mean? He's always overseas as far as where it doesn't work, and that's big talking overseas, you know what I mean? In Asia and shit, and so Samsung is looking into acquiring Sony, you know what I mean? I don't know, via hostile takeover or whatever the case may be. He told me this a few weeks ago. Maybe just the PlayStation brand. Because Sony wanted, I did it, bro, just real shit, not shits and giggles.
Yeah.
I did a video when I first came to YouTube on my older channel. It was like 2005. I made it had 16 subs. And there was an article that I got from Bloomberg or one of those fucking sites. And that it wasn't so much a gaming site. I just so happened to find it. And Microsoft was in talks to acquire Sony. But my man, what's his name, Ken Kugaragi, the guy there, the father of the PlayStation brand, he was opposed to working for a Western company or whatever. That's what because he was strictly opposed to that because they wanted to sell, maybe sell the PlayStation brand, whatever the case may be. Don't get me wrong, the PlayStation brand is profitable, but it doesn't make enough money to run Sony. No. Sony has a lot of shit, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's why he's not there anymore. They get that motherfucker, that red PlayStation, and they did this thing, got his ass out of there. You know what I mean? They did. It was about 2 or 3 years. They had a ceremony. They gave him this red PlayStation 3, and he stepped down or whatever. But he was opposed to that. But you might be right. And if, like I said, not saying I want Sony to go out of business. I couldn't imagine a world without Sony. You know what I mean? Yeah. Competition is good for everything. And I want to state this again. We're not here with a voodoo dog saying Sony go out of business. We're not saying it. No, competition is good for even in far as TVs. I like TVs. I'm about to buy me another TV. I'm about to give me a 4K. I like shit like that. That's the type of shit that I like. I'm into gadgets, and I'm a gadget faggot. That's what I'm into. You know what I mean? Faggot with a bunch of gadgets. That's just me. You know what I mean? And even as far as this console shit here, I'm happy that the PlayStation is doing well. Again, ladies, I own a PS4. I want these more. I'm not happy with their library. But if I had to choose between the two, I'm just being real. If I had to choose between the Wii U and the PS4, it'd be the PS4 all day. I just can't get with Nintendo's policies. That's another fucking conversation in entirety. But like I said, it is what it is, man.
I will say this though on the subject of Nintendo. It feels like almost we were talking about this behind the scenes about how Nintendo needs to revitalize their policies and get the old blood out of there. I'm thinking that PlayStation needs to do the same thing to get back to the PS2 and original PlayStation way of thinking.
You know what? Now I don't think they can afford to.
Well, they can't, but I'm just saying that would be.
They even Jack Tritton before, so he's out of there now. But they can't afford to. Remember the Papa rappers and those taking chances with those type games. Like I said, what made Sony great. Like Sony, like I said, you couldn't deny that. What again? Now listen to me, motherfuckers. Now maybe some of you guys can see what I said about Nintendo. What made Sony so great as far as the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2 because they had great third-party support. Again, now it's going to tie back in. You know what I mean? Metal Gear was exclusive. Grand Theft Autos were exclusive. You know what I mean? Right. Fucking Devil May all those like that. That's what Sony had great third-party support. Now people say, I know I'm getting off topic here. We don't need the Wii U to have third. They don't need all that. Nah, bullshit. Yeah. Now you see what I'm saying? That's what made the PlayStation 1 and the PS2 so fucking great. You know what I mean? All these games now that you see on multiplats, if one today were just exclusive on the PlayStation.
Tekken was one of them too.
I didn't even think about that though in my video because a lot of these dumb assholes, with the Wii U thing and saying that they don't need third party on the Wii. That's the dumbest shit ever. Like that's what made the NES the NES. It wasn't so much that Nintendo was exclusives. I'm just being real because to me, I like the third party games better than Nintendo exclusives. Right. You know what I mean? Fuck all that Kid Icarus and shit. I remember Russian Attack, Contra, motherfucking Double Dribble, Tecmo Bowl, Double Dragon. Fuck you know about that. You know what I mean? That's what made the NES great. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What's that shit? The arcade version. The Homer and Simpson. You know what I mean? The Simpsons game, the arcade version. That's what made the NES, Super Nintendo, make that shit great. You know what I mean? Was all those third party games there. But anyway, we've been going on for about 14 minutes. I wasn't expecting to go this long time. We get to talking, but like I said, I'm gonna start doing. Sometimes I'm just gonna fucking just sit down, hit the record button. We having some epic conversations behind the scenes, man. And I say, fuck me, make a video about it. But yeah, Sony. This is like I don't know. If they keep going the way I'm saying again, they keep going the way that they're going, I don't see them being in business in 2 to 3 years.
Well, I will say this though, and you know, people can say what they want about me after I say this, but Microsoft has two things going for them that the other two companies don't. Number one is the money. Number two, they have a gamer and Phil Spencer in charge of a gaming division.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. You know, hey, and now and then they gonna call you Microsoft an Xbox fan for that one. But anyway, it's with Phil Spencer, that is great. You know what I mean? We're gonna have a lot of exclusives, you know what I mean? But as far as Don Matrick, he was more of he made the Xbox very profitable. Forget the red ring of death. He said he made the Xbox brand profitable, he the one who brought the ads to the dashboard and all that shit right there. You know,
well, and that's the thing. I mean, you know, everybody's got their own set of tools that they bring to the table, and you know, eventually they have to leave, but they all contribute. Yeah. And now Phil Spencer is contributing in the way of the games that we're going to get for the Xbox One.
Yes, sir. But anyway, this is your boy Next Gen 720. I'm out. You want to shut yourself up before we leave?
My name is Deadshot Oz, and it was a pleasure being here. It's awesome being on one of your videos, man.
It is what it is. Bang, bang. Dope shit, man.